Hey everybody, today I've got the second release of the Canine combiner set for review called BB-51B Boney, which is the counterpart to this fellow here, our boy Roarmeo, who is, according to the character lore, the leader of the team, but given their dual-purpose combiner modes and Boney's character card, it would seem that leadership may sometimes change hands, or pause as it were. Since this is more or less a follow-on to the Roarmeo video review I did about a couple weeks ago, I'm going to try to keep this video fairly quick, but we do have a bit of new ground to cover, so let's get into it. As always, it comes in a nice looking box with cool artwork. Interestingly enough, the copy that I bought for Roarmeo has the combiner mode name in English, so apparently I got a hold of a Chinese release version for Boney. Produced by 52Toys, of course, mechanical design by their venerable in-house team X2R, with design by Alex Kubalski. As far as what's in the box, you've got a bubble card the figure is enclosed in, a box charger, usual stuff. Also a catalog and a character card. Let's take a closer look at this character card. One thing I want to point out is, this is kind of becoming a point of contention with 52Toys. They've been slipping up with typographical errors, but they're starting to show some inconsistencies in their product naming convention, and this is getting a little bit concerning. They really need to get a hold of somebody who's proofreading this stuff before it goes to production. So yeah, on the character card it says BB-51B and BB-51B on the box. So not really a good look for these guys. Hopefully they can remedy that. So on this character card, I read this just before I started writing up this review, and I had to laugh about this. So yeah, Boney is the mastermind of this nimble team in charge of all operation planning. Now that's interesting because Roarmeo is supposed to be the leader of the team. I guess Boney's sort of a disciplinary lieutenant or whatever. And here's the funny part. For Roarmeo's freestyle action operation, the comment is, "Did cosmic rays fry your f***ing head?" So I'm pretty sure this is the first and probably the only Beastbox character with an F-bomb written directly on the card, which is absolutely hilarious. So yeah, I think we can rule this one out as a kid's toy because we all know how impressionable children are.
Well, I hope you're satisfied.
What?
Every word out of my son's mouth now is
Moving on to visual style, let's take a closer look at this little guy. So obviously the main difference between these two is Roarmeo is essentially white with black paneling accents, and Boney is red with black accents and white graphic application lines. And continuing with racing machine influence, got a lot of styling cues that look like they're taken directly off a street bike or some type of racing machine. So obviously you've got these disc brake calipers here, what looks like air intakes on the rear quarter. On the torso you've got an engine block, a little radiator here, some fuel lines, and a lot of racing stripes. As far as the color scheme between these two, it's very possibly an homage to Eddie Van Halen, or more specifically his Frankenstrats, which were his customized guitars. They were part of his signature style. So in Van Halen's earliest years, his first custom guitar had a white base coat and black racing stripes. He said directly that he got the design idea from race cars, which totally makes sense. He was definitely a motorhead who owned a lot of fast sports cars. And a few years later, he built an entirely new Frankenstrat, which was probably the one he was a lot more well known for. And that one had a red body with black and white racing stripes. So if this theory holds true, Boney is effectively the second Frankenstrat. But who knows, I had theorized in my Roarmeo review that the name was a nod to the car maker Alfa Romeo, and I have it on good authority that I was totally wrong. Oh well, when you're wrong, you're wrong. Alright, let's take a good look at this guy. Obviously he's got a more conventional head sculpt than Roarmeo. Roarmeo has triangular teeth, Boney's are more square. For the winglets, his end with blades as opposed to Roarmeo's light bars. Their bones are a little bit different. Roarmeo has a smoke bomb here, and Boney has a C4 bomb, except in his case, that might as well be an F-bomb. Yeah, and something else I want to point out about these bombs I didn't notice before because the paint application is so good on Roarmeo's bone, is it's actually black paint on top of red plastic. It's really hard to see because it's such a clean paint job. I really can't see any mistakes. Unfortunately, the paint application on Boney's is a little bit lacking because you can see some overspray in spots where it was missed. Not a huge deal, but it was definitely a little bit lower quality of a paint job here than on Roarmeo's. Worth noting is the red plastic, which has a little bit of a fleck paint. It's really subtle, and I'm not sure if I picked it up on camera, but overall it gives it a very nice sheen. Another thing I want to point out here is what I know about printing on physical products. There's a lot of white graphic applications on Boney, and printing is what you call a subtractive color model, which means that the more ink you apply to an object, the darker it gets, but with white you're actually going lighter. Because inks are transparent, with white you have to give it what you call a double hit, which basically means that when you print on a substrate, and without moving the object at all, you have to imprint a second time. This requires a pretty high amount of precision, and if you look at these tiny details, they were able to do it accurately on a scale less than millimeters, maybe even as far as micrometers to get that level of accuracy. So kudos to 52Toys manufacturing partner because they did an outstanding job. Moving on, you got the stylized letter B with Boney with checkered pattern here. You get caution, caution, caution. And again, the infamous front wing typo. You've got hypermotor here, very nice detail all the way around. Roarmeo's hind quarter has a single fat racing stripe with the land animal insignia, and Boney's is a little bit more elaborate with a double stripe and a checkered pattern. Since I already covered the transformation in Roarmeo's video, which I left a link to in the description, I thought it would be a good idea to show how these two work together in their combiner mode. We'll set aside the winglets here to keep this a little bit simpler. Since Boney is the lieutenant and he's the star of the show, I'll do him first as the tail mode. The first thing you want to do is raise his forelimbs up and over his head like so, and you can rotate these around 180 degrees. Then you tuck his head in, open that chest cavity up, lower his head down, and the ears will fold back into these grooves. The forelimbs just fold up and into a little groove. Then the paws fold up like so. Now we can go ahead and fold the tail down into the torso. The torso is going to rotate 180 degrees. His arms are going to fold forward like so. Here's what I've been saying about the impressive surface level simplicity of a fairly basic figure design, yet with a lot of underlying sophistication with hidden joints and extensions made necessary for the combiner transformation. These forelimbs come together as sort of a backpack. This section doesn't have any interlocking parts, so they're essentially held together by friction. These hindquarters are kind of a double articulated hinge with a ball joint for the hind leg. So there's a ton of configurability just in this one hinge. We're going to take this hinge and pull it out to the side like so. Now this hind leg piece will need to rotate forward. We'll rotate the top part of this forelimb around 180 degrees. Now we're going to take this hinge for the ball joint section that's going to fold back like so, and this part of the hinge is going to fold down. So you want these hindquarter pieces in line in this configuration so they can be directly adjacent to the opposite limb, which will all connect together. Rotate the paws so they look like they're clapping. There are connecting ports. These might be hard to pick up on camera, but you've got this little connection port that's going to connect to the opposite leg. Same right here. And you're going to have this connecting piece that connects right here. One additional step I almost forgot to show off here is this piece that can extend out like so. It's not totally necessary for the transformation, but it definitely helps to extend the tail out a little bit and give it a little more of a prominent silhouette. Now there's some flexibility with how you can pose it with the torso and the hindquarters. So cool, we'll put him aside here. And he's a funky looking little fellow, almost looks like a snake with a big old flat head or something like that. In case you're curious what Unis is thinking of this, he's an executive producer on X Mattingly Productions and always observing off camera. So yeah, moving on to Roarmeo. For the head section, it's basically the same steps as what you went through with some slight variation. You start with the forelimbs here, rotate up, and the elbow joints around 180 degrees. The tail will tuck into the torso. Chest cavity opens up and the head and ears fold in per usual. We can bend the torso slightly. This forms the neck, so it'll give them a little bit of a head tilt. The hindquarters are going to come up together about the same way they did on the tail section. So we're going to start with pulling these pieces straight out to give them clearance. Hind leg will rotate 180 degrees. The ball joint will need to rotate up and back, and at this point the hind quarter panel will fold down and in, like so. It's all the same connectivity with interlocking pegs, and of course you can extend these limbs with these hidden joints. Then for that part, all you really need to do is fold them up and over, and that becomes essentially the eyes on the maw of this monstrosity we're going to call Massive Attacka. These hind panels form his predator mouth. His fangs fold out like so. Crazy looking character. He's got some funky quadratic eyes, and his little tootsies make him look like a sort of a T-Rex. So to connect the head to the tail, you've got these oversized ports, and they just fold down. And that is the head and tail of Massive Attacka, so look out, y'all. One thing I didn't notice when I did my Roarmeo review is that these huge ports on the sides are actually spring-loaded. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of that is, but I would guess it's to give it a little bit of flexibility so the legs can turn outward somewhat. Anyway, I'll break these guys apart and swap them around so you can see what it looks like with Boney as the head and Roarmeo as the tail. Here we go. Here's Roarmeo as the tail piece. Cool, let's keep it going. And this is the head sculpt of the bony head version of Massive Attacka. It has a different set of circular compound eyes, a little bit creepier looking in my opinion. One interesting thing is you could technically use these ports from the Roarmeo section to plug into the Boney half. It'd totally fit and would more or less eliminate the backpack, but the bodies would become disjointed, so apparently whoever's going to be the head has to use its male ports. And there you go, the bony head version of Massive Attacka, and that's pretty cool. So maybe Roarmeo's head might be lost in the cosmos, but Boney Attacka gets a little bit stabby. Personally, I'm a little bit indifferent to who makes the better head. I like them both, but these little slashing wingtips certainly makes this creature look a little more menacing. Alright, moving on to a quick box grade. Boney is no change from Roarmeo's score of 29 out of 30. Both of these canines are a stellar feat of engineering and design, a sophisticated study of animal anatomy and precision manufacturing. They're different enough from each other that if you only wanted one of these figures, you've got options, but for my money, there are great qualities with both designs and I like them equally. I'll be totally honest, I wasn't expecting much out of this set of canines, but found myself completely surprised by how f***ing good they are, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next two for this set. As always, I very much appreciate your time watching this review. I hope we get to meet again soon, and in the meantime, have a great day.
You know what he said to me 5 minutes ago? Where's my f***ing cupcake?